My name is Marie Graves. I work for the Department of Health and Human Services in the city of Springfield, and primarily my work consists of preventing overdoses from opioids. That includes heroin, Oxycontin, Percocet, any of the prescription drugs. I began this work about 6.5 years ago when the state really took a look at the amount of people that were dying at an alarming rate. And so they wanted to figure out why that was, how to prevent it, and what to do moving forward. So I've been doing that for all these years. And so tonight, really, my focus is going to be on risk and protective factors. It's language that we use all across the state. There's several communities across the state that do exactly what I do, from Boston to Worcester, to places like Charleston, the smaller communities, to the North Shore. So there are several me's across the state. And so we are all working together to create, hello? I don't know, I really can't move. We're all working together to try to combat this issue. Initially, the work that I did primarily consisted of working with adults, but I have now worked with young people in trying to prevent overdoses or even risky or harmful use to begin with, just the onset of it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. We only have 25 minutes apiece, so I'm gonna talk really fast. I tend to do that anyway, so if you need me to slow down, just yell at me to slow down. Betsy, who's over here to my right, she has my card, and so if anybody has any more questions after this and wants more clarity, PowerPoints, anything like that, you can grab a card from Betsy, call me at any time. I don't do what's called referrals. I'm not a referral service, but call me, because I know someone that knows someone, I promise you, and I will get you answers, okay? So, anybody know what risk and protective factors are when I say something like that? Especially when it comes into play around substance use disorders or substance abuse. What is that? Anybody? Yeah.
Risk factors are factors that would contribute to a certain behavior, and protective factors are factors that would prevent or discourage.
Absolutely right. Did everybody hear that? Risk factors are factors that potentially will increase the risk of harmful behavior, and protective factors decreases those risks. So this picture right here is a picture from my personal stash. I recently was in Washington, D.C. at a CADCA conference. CADCA is the Coalitions, Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, and it's a huge national conference, and I had to kill some time, so I went to the Smithsonian. And so I was amazed. That brought me back to my childhood at the Smithsonian, because it was just so big and so many buildings. I just was blown away. So I'm taking pictures all in there, and I don't know if I should have, but I did. But then I saw this picture, and as I was going through preparing this PowerPoint, I thought that this was an appropriate picture. What do you see in that picture? Jellyfish and what? Shark, right? Primarily, what does that jellyfish look like to you? What? Well, it doesn't look dangerous. It looks beautiful. Okay? The jellyfish looks beautiful and peaceful. Yes, we know it's dangerous. The shark looks dangerous. Okay? Right? So I look at the jellyfish as a protective factor and the shark as a risk factor. Even though I know the jellyfish are dangerous, but you have to work with me. Just work with me. Okay? Okay. So risk and protective factors exist in multiple contexts. Okay, so when we're talking about risk and protective factors, we're talking about individuals do not live in a bubble, right? Your family members, your friends, your children do not live in a bubble. They live in a larger society, right? And within that society is their family, their community, and the larger society as a whole. So when we talk about multiple contexts, we talk about individuals are a part of a larger piece of the pie, okay? A variety of risk and protective factors exist in each and every one of those separate contexts, okay? So for instance, yourself, you look at your biology, your ideology, your physiology, okay? Your family, you have your siblings, your mom, your dad, and your community. You have your schools, you have your neighbors, and in society, you have your city, you have your state, you have things that are larger. So within those multiple contexts, the individual deals with many things that contribute to the risk and protective factors in their life. So you have to understand that. It's not just an individual alone. It's everything else around them. Understood? Yeah. So when we talk about multiple contexts, when we talk about risk and protective factors, right? Risk factors promote risky behaviors, right? They increase risky behaviors. Protective factors decrease risky behaviors, okay? In families, risk factors include parents who use drugs and alcohol, who suffer from mental illness, suffer from substance use disorders. They may suffer child abuse, maltreatment, inadequate supervision, okay? So in a home or in a family, that might be going on. And if a child is exposed to those things, then it increases their risks for harmful behaviors, including substance use, okay, if that's going on. An example of a protective factor would be parental involvement, okay? You all here are participating in what's considered a protective factor. You are involved, okay? Other protective factors potentially could be being a part of, a parent making sure that they're a part of after-school programs, having a kid in an after-school program, or joining sports, things of that nature. So by involving them in positive activities throughout their childhood, you decrease the risk of substance use. Okay? In communities, risk factors could include neighborhood poverty, violence. Protective factors might include the availability of faith-based resources, right? So sometimes we dismiss things like faith-based resources, but that is a protective factor in your community, okay? The Rotary Club. Anything that has community involvement decreases risk and increases protective factors. So the more you involve yourself with your community, the more you involve yourself in your child's schooling and activities, decreases their risk for substance use. Doesn't prevent it, okay, by any means, but it decreases it, okay? And in society, risk factors can include norms and laws favorable to substance use. Can anyone think of a norm or a law right now that is favorable to substance use? Marijuana, absolutely. Marijuana. Also, alcohol. We know alcohol is legal, right? But in our culture, the norm is it's okay to drink. It is legal. Just like with prescriptions, they're legal. And in our society, it's okay to take them. Now, when taking prescription medications properly, it's not a problem. But when you're taking them improperly, it's a problem, potentially. It can lead to substance use disorders, okay? So, also, racism and a lack of economic opportunity. When you live in a community that is poor and poor employment opportunities, that also is a risk, because then it translates into your family. If there's not enough food on the table, if there's not enough to eat, if you're not warm enough, those basic needs aren't being met, that increases folks' risks for substance use. Protective factors include policies limiting availability of substances or anti-hate laws defending marginalized populations, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth, okay? One of the things that I think about when I think about laws favorable to not using substances are in your communities that, say, have liquor stores, okay? And in liquor stores, they have windows, and in the windows, what's there? What's in the windows of liquor stores? Advertisements of what? Alcohol, cigarettes, those type of things. So an ordinance could be passed in your community that limits the amount of these advertisements, especially if kids are walking by them to school. They see them at eye level. So by allowing an ordinance to be passed to take some of those things away, again, you're not exposing young people to these images, and it decreases risk. Okay, does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that? I'm sorry I'm going really fast, but that's what I have to do. So how do we sort of combat that, right? we don't have enough money, I don't have enough money in the world to combat the alcohol industry. I don't have it to combat the marijuana industry or anything like that. I don't have that type of, those dollars to do that. But there are some things that you can do in your communities and your homes in order to be a part of the prevention world, okay? So a common prevention strategy, and there's several, and these strategies are evidence-based strategies that are mandated through the state. So the work that I do really focuses and is surrounded around evidence-based strategies. So anything that I do, there's evidence to back it up that it's successful. So one of the evidence-based strategies is public education. Okay? What we're doing right now, we're raising awareness in the community that there's an issue, there's a problem. You know, the superintendent, Mr. Gordon Smith, he has taken this on and saying, yes, we have a problem in our community. Not necessarily our school, but our community, and we want to be a part of making it better. So the goal of public education is to increase knowledge and awareness of a particular health issue. This can be supported by the development of successful programs and policies. Again, in this school, the middle school, there are things that we can do that doesn't seem like it would be a policy, but if Mr. Smith or the school decided to embed some of this evidence-based work or practices in the school, then it is a policy. It's gonna have sustainable change. And so that's why we encourage those type of things. Public education can also be an effective way to increase awareness about new existing laws, publicizing community-based programs, and reinforcing instruction taught in schools or community-based organizations. So for instance, in a school like this, one of the things that can happen, which I know they're working on as a committee, is doing something called a social norms campaign, okay? So social norms campaigns really are focused around data. And so earlier, Diana said that there was data taken in the schools. It's anonymous data, and the state provides these surveys every year to the middle schools, or every other year, depending on which tool they use. But this data really looks at the perception of young people. Are young people really having a hard time with substance use? Are they really using as much as we think they're using? And so this data really shows that sometimes that's not the case. Not the case at all. Sometimes what that data shows is that young people's perception of use is different than actual use. And so the social norms campaigns, what they do is promote that positive messaging, saying, listen, 89%, 90% of young people in this school don't use. 80, 90% of kids feel that it's wrong. And so promoting those messages, again, just like the alcohol advertisement, they can see it, and by removing it, it decreases their risk of use. By promoting those positive images of most kids don't use, decreases risk and increases protective factors. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Another type of prevention strategy is individual level strategy, right? So this prevention strategy really focuses on the life skills that are important and most effective in young people's lives. So a lot of times when this work gets done on the middle school age level, the language is super tough for them to sort of ingest. And so we want to make sure that this language is appropriate for young people. And sometimes just getting to the place where they can focus and sit down and sort of absorb this information, there has to be some work to be done. So life skills sort of work happens, talking about decision making and those type of things. Those are the things that can be done on an individual level. Programs that involve interactions among participants and encourage them to learn drug refusal skills are huge. It's not easy being young, I should know. Young people are resilient, yes, but nowadays it's tough. It's tough for young people to say no to their peers. It's tough when they're in situations where they don't know what to do. And sometimes not saying anything at all could be detrimental. So working with them to build drug refusal skills is key. That increases protective factors in them and decreases risk. Being able to say, no, this is not something I want to do. And remember when we talked about the social norms campaign, not only do I not want to do it, but most of my friends don't do it anyway. You're in the minority. And that's something, if we can build that in our young people, how great would that be? Interventions that focus on direct and indirect media influences on substance use that appear to be more effective than interventions that don't focus on social influences. Again, really looking at the media advertisements that young people are sort of being bombarded with daily, and putting them into context and understanding that these interventions that focus on these influences on substance use aren't reality. It's not real. When young people listen to hip-hop music and listen to those messages, understanding the difference between this is not real and this lifestyle is not real, as opposed to this is what's real in our community. Okay? Programs that emphasize on norms for social commitment and not using drugs are superior to those with this emphasis. You know, again, back to that social norms, promoting that positive message. Most kids don't want to use. Most kids feel it's bad. Most kids feel that their parents feel it's bad, right? So if you promote those messages, imagine spreading those all around school instead of just say no and these sort of, by saying, most of you guys don't do it. Perception is reality. Anybody heard of that? Perception is reality? It's true. Adding community components to school-based programs that appear to add their effectiveness. Again, implementing something in the school, on the school level. Now, we did talk earlier, remember, there's multiple contexts, multiple layers. So the school is one layer, but again, the individual, the family, the community, and we all have to work together in order to make this work and be effective. Adding training in life skills or trainings that focus on social resistance skills may increase program effectiveness. Again, really increasing young people's ability to absorb information. Any questions regarding that? No? Okay, so these are the sources that I cited. A lot of these are on the website for SAMHSA. SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse Mental Health, what's the S? Services Administration. Thank you, Rich. That's the federal arm of the work. And so a lot of this came from those resources. And these are additional resources that I offer at the Health Department in Springfield. I do work with the communities of East Long Meadow, Holyoke, and Chicopee. And so some of the things we do and work with and talk about is Addiction 101. What does that look like? Referrals. Again, I'm not a referral service, but call me. Overdose prevention, including naloxone. Does anyone know what naloxone is? Anyone heard of Narcan? Right? Narcan? Narcan will reverse an overdose if you find yourself in a situation. Overdoses from things as bad as heroin and things as bad as prescription medications. It will reverse it. So one of the things I do is provide a training regarding that. And cultural responsiveness in regards to substance use disorders. Because, you know, unfortunately, this disease affects everyone. And so sometimes folks aren't aware of that. Even within the community of folks that use substances, no matter who you are and what age you are, there's vast differences within each community, within that community. And so these are some things we touch upon and talk about. Any other questions? Because I'm finished with my presentation. We do. Okay. Any questions? I can talk for days. Anything? Yes?
What skills would you focus on as preventive measures?
In regards to what, young people? Well, sometimes, again, it's decision making. Right? So sometimes it's hard for young people to sort of focus on making a decision. I hate going out to dinner with my son because I have to give him the menu 2 hours before we go. And no matter how many times I give him the menu ahead of time, it takes him forever to make a decision on what to eat. So I hate going out to dinner with him. But decision-making skills are one of them. And really preparing them for any information to be absorbed. We work in the City of Springfield schools and the middle schools as well. And one of my staff members, he does this work, and before he goes in and does those social norm kind of campaigns, he prepares the students. Not only does he prepare the students, but in Springfield there's so many middle schools, and each middle school has very unique characteristics about their middle schools. So he not only goes in there and each middle school and assesses their characteristics, which is huge. He goes in and does very tailored interventions with those particular schools, because one size does not fit all for all young people. Okay? There's young people that aren't going to be able to focus really well when you talk to them. There's young people that are super excited about the work and want to be a part of it. There's young people that don't care and want nothing to do with it. So in order to sort of allow for them to absorb this important information, life skills trainings are some of the things that we do, including decision making. Any other questions? Yes, back there. That's a good question, and that's something that we just recently talked about. So in the past, evidence has shown that middle school age kids, 9 to 12, is the age that, the early onset of sort of awareness of substance use and those type of things. We're finding now more and more that it's younger. It's getting younger and younger. And so I am not aware currently of specific prevention tools other than life skills type of tools that are aimed at the young people. So the middle school age social norms, media campaigns and things are a little too savvy for young people, but there's definitely some things with the life skills, again, about decision making, those type of things, to get started with that language. And language is important too for these young people, because one of the things that is, it's sort of sad that people that suffer from addiction, people that have substance use disorders are labeled, right? And they're stigmatized because of what they're struggling with. And so the more we can use language to sort of destigmatize this disease, the better we all will be, and people will be able to receive the help that they need. Because that type of language, it's harmful for folks trying to go into treatment and have long-term recovery. So yes, the life skills piece, I'm aware that there are some resources for the younger groups, but nothing this savvy for middle school, not yet. Any other questions? Okay, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about
Naloxone? Narcan? Okay. So, naloxone, Narcan. Narcan will reverse an opioid overdose. It doesn't matter if it's heroin, it doesn't matter if it's a prescription medication, it doesn't matter. I truly promote Narcan and naloxone because it will save someone's life and give them an opportunity to go into treatment, okay? Because you can't go into treatment if you're dead. And so this will save your life. What happens is when your body has had too much of a drug, whether it's heroin or prescription medications, it blocks receptors in your brain that cause you to breathe, right? So the receptors in your brain that allow you to breathe is blocked by the drug. And once it's blocked, you will go into respiratory suppression. You will start your organs might start to shut down, all of that, because you're not breathing. So what naloxone will do, it will knock off the drug off of the receptor, and then it will sit on top of the receptor as a blocker, okay? So they have naloxone in a kit that anyone can have access to. If you go to a Tapestry Health, which there's several around this area, if you get a prescription from your doctor, Walgreens has a standing prescription. You can receive naloxone in this kit. It comes in 2 little vials. And this is for people that suffer from addiction, right? So it's for the family member or friend. It's not for them. Because if they're overdosing, they cannot use it on themselves. And it's something that you can have in your home and be able to revive someone if they find themselves having an overdose and find themselves in a situation. It's a Band-Aid, okay? It won't last forever. It lasts 30 to 90 minutes. Only long enough for you to call the ambulance and get some help for that person. Because if you don't, that drug will wear off eventually, and then that person will go back into an overdose, and potentially it could be fatal. So naloxone is a Band-Aid. Now, I know that there's some people out there thinking, by giving this to folks, you're telling them it's okay to use, it's a crutch, it's great, they're gonna go ahead and use more. That's the furthest thing from the truth, okay? The furthest thing. In the work that I've done, I've been in this field for 30 years, but for the past 7, I've worked specifically with substance use disorders. And I can tell you right now that I've spent a lot of time with people that have suffered from addiction, no matter what they look like, in all types of neighborhoods, communities, all over the place. And the message is the same. when you want to use and get high, you will use and get high. There's nothing that's going to stop that. Not me telling you, not you telling you, nothing, until you're ready to go into treatment. Or sometimes you're not ready. You get incarcerated or other things happen to you. But using to the edge is not the goal. Because when people use Narcan or naloxone to save someone's life, you have immediately cut off their high. Immediately, it happens like that. And unfortunately, especially with opioids, you tend to get really, really sick from withdrawals when you're not using, right? So that's the last thing someone who is suffering from addiction wants. They don't want to get that achy feeling that they get. It's a horrible feeling. Sometimes they detox from that drug for days at a time. It's excruciating pain. So using to go to the edge and knowing that that safety net is there doesn't prevent someone from using. Yes?
I just wanted to point out, Marie, that it's also available at large co-meetings.
Yep.
Trained for Narcan.
Good.
And also, could you speak to the fact that not only addicts overdose from using prescription pain medications, but the reason it's called accidental overdoses, that sometimes people who prescribe medications also experience.
Listen, she's starting something. I do this, I have a longer training that gets into that specifically, but she's absolutely right. So sometimes folks that use prescription medications, they use them appropriately, okay? So I don't want to scare everybody thinking that the prescription med problem, it is an issue, but if you're using it appropriately, you're okay. But sometimes people have things happen, there's accidents that happen. And so you can use Narcan to pull yourself out of an overdose, or no, you can't use it yourself. Narcan can be used to have you come out of an overdose if something like that happens. For instance, I know I worked with a couple who were a little older, and he had broke his back at work for years before, and was still on opioids for pain. The thing about him, because of his age, his wife feared for him because he would sometimes forget to take his medication. So sometimes he would take his morning meds and forget that he took them, and then sometimes would go take them again. So those are situations where Narcan absolutely would be appropriate if they find themselves in a situation where something like that happens via an accident. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes?
This might be outside of what your area of expertise is.
Sure.
I'm just curious. So if, say, someone were to use naloxone to stop an overdose and call 911, the person arrives at the hospital, then what happens?
They will.
Services available to that person? Do they just triage and let them go home? Are police involved in any way? I mean, what?
Okay, so that's a lot, but I'm going to try to answer every component. So if someone's used Narcan on someone and they're in an ambulance, they go to the hospital. Once they're in the hospital, naloxone is going to be put in that person via IV, and it's going to stay pumped into their system until the drug dissipates in their brain. Okay, so they will not go back into an overdose. Once they're in the hospital, they're going to receive naloxone until the drug is gone. As far as any type of services are concerned, if police are involved, so has anyone heard of the Good Samaritan law? Is anybody familiar? What is that? Sir?
Basically, you can just stop anybody and you can't be sued.
That's right. Well, it's limited immunity for arrest, okay? So if you're in a position where you're with someone that has overdosed and you call the police, as long as there's not pounds and tons of drugs on the table, you will not be arrested. That was put in place because fear of arrest was one of the intervening variables of why people were dying at the alarming rates in Massachusetts as they were years ago when I first started this work. Okay, so if you go to a hospital and now you have naloxone in you, the police now, I say, have been pretty good because now they understand what naloxone is. They understand the problem of addiction. They are understanding that this is an issue. This is a disease. And so unless, again, this is not a real illegal situation, there is no fear of arrest. They might actually refer you or give you some information about where you can go to seek treatment. I know there's social workers in hospital, EDs. Maybe Rich can talk about that more. Well, not talk about it, but I believe there's social workers in the ED and things like that where they can offer services to you if you want to seek treatment. The docs, I work on a task force at Bay State Medical Center over in Springfield. There's a task force there where I work directly with the doctors that are looking at care plans for people that pretty much, we have a feeling that they're suffering from addiction and doing some drug-seeking behavior and things of that nature. So people are a lot more sensitive, a lot more aware. I can't say all hospital situations and settings that's going to happen. You're going to have this great experience. But more and more now, people are really being sensitive to this issue because, again, you know, the governor declared a state of emergency because of how many folks were overdosing. And so people are now very much aware and hypersensitive to this issue. So that's sort of what would happen. And hopefully that person will be at a place where they're ready for treatment and seek further help and assistance, and maybe not, and just maybe not. You know, I know someone who's been sober, been in recovery for over 20 years, and he's somebody that I know, he has a PhD right now and teaches and works for the state and works on the federal level with this issue. So this is somebody that freely shares his story. But one story he shared with me that I love, and I always tend to, it resonates with me. He said, Marie, he goes, I was locked up in jail. And at this point, 43 people had told me that I needed help. 43 people had told me that I needed to get, you know, services. 43 people told me I was killing myself, and it didn't matter what those 43 people said. But that 44th person, while I was sitting in York Street Jail, who was pushing a library cart down the hall with books on it, he was the one that said what I needed to hear that particular moment, and he was the one and the reason why I went into recovery. And he's been in recovery since he attained his PhD, and again, he's extremely successful. So understand that this is a disease that takes time, just like anything else. If you had diabetes, some people don't get that cured or worked out or anything pretty quickly. It takes progress. So I think we're about, oh, one more question. And anybody can talk to me offline if you want to.
What's the window that you have to use that?
Naloxone, about 30 to 90 minutes. And depending on how much you use. And so that's why you're given 2 kits. Because me, I'm a big girl, you know, so it might take more than 2 kits for me, but 2 kits average should wake you right up immediately, and then you're gonna go into a withdrawal immediately. That's why calling 911 is important, because then they can come and put the naloxone in your system via IV and get you to the hospital to continue your care. But it's a Band-Aid, but it'll save someone's life, because you can't go to treatment if you're dead. Okay. I'm gonna end here. I know we'll be switching any second now. Betsy has my cards. You can talk to me offline and chat until the next session. I really appreciate you listening to me and taking your time. And again, if you wanna call me, I'm at work every day, bright and early. You can give me a call and I'll answer any questions for you if I can. Thank you.